You guys have no idea how excited I am to finally put together this wheel set. This is going to be a lot of fun, and it's going together in the exact color combo that I've been dreaming about for a while. Alright, I'm going to begin with the rear wheel. The first step is to separate the spokes. Most wheels have two different lengths of spoke or a different angle in the spoke. For this particular wheel, there is a shorter spoke and a longer spoke. So as you can see, there's a spoke that's just a little bit longer than the other one, and that's going to make a big difference when lacing the wheel. Alright, I've got an equal amount of each spoke. Time to start lacing. To begin the wheel lacing process, you want to start with the numbers on the rim facing down. On this rim, the numbers are stamped here on the outside, but on most rims, they are here on the inside of the lip. So I've got the numbers here, and I'm going to place the rim with them facing down. And then for the hub, the brake rotor side is going to be facing down as well. To begin the lacing process, I've got the longer of the spokes, and I'm going to feed them through the inside holes on the hub here. And the inside holes are the ones closer to the center of the hub. So these ones right here. Now I've got the shorter spokes, and these are going to go on the outside holes. And these spokes go on top of the inner spokes. So when you slide it through the hub, it is going to sit on top of the spokes we put in previously. Now it is time to start lining the spokes up with the holes on the rim. On the rim, there are spoke holes that are angled down and holes that are angled up. I'm going to be shooting for the holes that are angled up, and those will line up with the spokes coming from this side of the hub. And like I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure all your upper spokes are on top of the inner spokes. So it is pretty simple to start lining the spokes up. When you have spokes crossed like this, we're going to have a spoke hole that is in between them. Just going to pull the spokes up to the rim, and it is pretty easy to see which spokes go where. And one really important step when you're building wheels is to apply some anti-seize lubricant to the threads. That'll keep the spokes in good shape for a long time. During this step, I'm going to thread on the spoke nipples until there's about 2 threads left on each spoke. So I want all of them to be pretty even. And doing that will make the truing process go a little smoother. Alright, I've got the wheel laced up on one side. Just going to flip it over and follow the same steps. Again, I'm going to start with the longer spokes on the inside and the shorter spokes on the outside.
And as I'm feeding these longer inner spokes in, it's going to let them hang, and that'll give me room to get the outer spokes into place. If I feed the inner spokes through the holes on the rim before lacing the outer spokes, it's going to be tough to get those outer spokes in. And of course, going to apply some anti-seize to all the spoke threads.
On this side, I find it easiest to put the outer spoke in first. That way it's out of the way for the inner spoke. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side as well. Thread the nipples onto the spoke until there's about 2 threads remaining. As I'm working my way towards the last couple spokes, it's going to be a little bit harder to feed them through the holes on the rim. So what I'll do here is slide the spoke back a little bit in the hub and pull it up into place, thread the nipple on, and once I thread the nipple down, that will pull the spoke into position. And I'm going to show you one last time on the last spoke here. I'm going to slide it up a little bit in the hub, line it up with the hole on the rim, pull it up, and then thread the nipple on. And once you start threading the nipple on, the spoke will find its place. Well guys, I've got the wheel all laced up and she is looking pretty sweet. And the front wheel is going to be much of the same. So I'm going to get both wheels laced up before I start any truing. Now I'm going to bust out the front wheel. The only difference being the spokes on the front are the same. No need to separate them. I've got both wheels laced up and all the spoke nipples are threaded down till there's about 2 threads remaining on each. Now it's time to tighten down the spokes a little bit more in an even pattern. So how I'm going to go about tightening the spokes in an even pattern is I'm going to pick a hole in the rim. I'm going to choose this one right here. It is for the rim lock or the tube. And then I'll start at this spoke here. Give it a few turns, skip 2 spokes, tighten this one, skip 2, tighten all the way around until I come back to that hole, and then I'll move to the second spoke. Follow that same pattern around and then move on to the third spoke. And once you go 3 revolutions around the wheel, you will have hit every spoke and you'll have a nice even tighten on all the spokes. Alright, for this step I'm going to tighten each spoke until I feel just a little bit of pressure being applied to the rim. And right about there feels good. Man, these wheels are rad looking, turning out exactly like I'd imagined. And now for the funnest part of all, truing them up. I'll be using this Tusk truing stand that I picked up from Rocky Mountain a couple years ago. Alright, let's take a look how the wheel is balanced already. Got a little side to side action and a little up and down as well. The first thing I'm going to focus on is the side to side movement in the wheel. To correct the side to side movement in the wheel, I'll be using this indicator bar here. Just going to slide it down until it's about level with the rim. What I've got to figure out is exactly where the wheel is out of true. I'm going to spin the wheel until the indicator bar makes contact with the rim. So right about there is where it starts making contact. Spinning it around, and then it stops right about there. So we've got a good 7 or 8 spokes here where the wheel is pulled to this side here. And to correct that, I'm going to loosen the spokes coming from the left side of the hub and then tighten the spokes coming from the right side. So it doesn't really take that much of a turn to make a difference. I'm just going to loosen half a turn on each one of these spokes coming from the left side, and then tighten half a turn on the spokes coming from the right side. So to give this a little more explanation, if you have a wheel that's out of true and moving towards the left side, you're going to want to tighten the spokes coming from the right side of the hub here. So these spokes would be angled towards the right, and then loosen the spokes coming from the left side of the hub. So the key I found with wheel truing is patience. Just give each spoke a little bit of a turn and don't go overboard with it. Before I get too carried away with truing the wheel, I need to measure the rim to hub distance. So this is the distance from the rim to the mounting surface here on the hub. I'll need to lay the wheel flat on the workbench here to measure that. I'm going to take the measurement right here, and the recommended spec is 27 millimeters or a little over an inch. We're looking at 1 inch and 3/16 right now, so a little bit more than what they recommend. I'm going to have to adjust this. And how I'm going to go about adjusting the gap here is loosening up some of the spokes and then simply pushing down on the rim to get that clearance just a little bit smaller. This probably would have been wise to do when the spokes were a little more loose, but there's always that one step you forget. Got all the spokes somewhat loosened up. Just gonna push down on the rim, and that should close the gap up right here. Moved a little bit. I might have to loosen up the spokes just a tad bit more. I'm gonna give this another shot. All right, that's right where it should be. It's at 1 inch and 1/16. I'm gonna toss the wheel back up on the truing stand and get this thing all trued up. And it's always a good idea to flip the wheel around on the stand. That way you're not truing from one side and throwing that hub to wheel distance out of whack again. So for side-to-side movement in the wheel, this is about as close as I'm gonna get it. You gotta remember, it's a dirt bike and you're riding it on rough terrain, and having a perfectly balanced wheel isn't absolutely necessary. Now I'm gonna check for up and down movement in the wheel. Looks like I've got a little bit that needs to be corrected here. How I'm going to correct the up and down movement is by locating the highest spot on the wheel. So I've got the indicator bar here on the edge of the wheel, and I'm just going to spin it around until it makes contact with the rim. So right there it's making contact, and this is the highest spot on the rim. So to correct this, I'm going to tighten a few spokes here on the high spot, and in turn that will pull this side of the rim towards the hub, fixing that high spot. And like I was saying earlier, it doesn't really take a whole lot of turns to make a difference. I'm just gonna go about a half a turn at a time. There's still somewhat of a high spot right here. Just gonna tighten a few more of these spokes. One thing to keep in mind as you're correcting the up and down movement of the wheel is to periodically check the side to side, make sure that's not going out of whack. Alrighty guys, I've got the wheel spinning as straight as an arrow. Just gonna do a final tightening on the spokes and the front wheel will be done. I'll be using the same pattern I described earlier for tightening the spokes evenly. So starting at a hole on the rim, let's find a hole here. Okay, right here. Starting at this spoke right here, I'm gonna tighten, skip 2, tighten, go all the way around 3 times, and every spoke will have been tightened and checked over. So I've got all the spokes tightened down, and as far as how tight they need to be, the manual recommends 2.7 foot-pounds, so not really a whole lot of torque. I don't use a torque wrench on wheels, or I should say I use the torque wrench that's in my arm. Pretty much just go by feel. So if I had to explain what 2.7 foot-pounds should feel like, it should be about the same amount of torque you're applying to the bolts for your plastic. So definitely don't be wrenching on it too hard. Alright, the front wheel's all done, and no need to walk you through the process on the rear. It's exactly the same. I'll just show you a few clips as I'm truing up the rear wheel.